calling the meeting to order, calling the meeting of the Licensed Breeders Advisory Board to order. And if I could get you please to do the roll call.
Yes, sir. Steve Epperson, presiding officer.
Here.
Babette Ellis. Joseph Levine.
Present, sorry.
Cynthia Rothermel.
I am present.
Dr. Melanie Mercer.
Present.
Andrea Gregg.
Here.
And Kimberly Papke. Here. Sir, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, I guess the first thing we're going to have is Mary's going to give the members the training on the video conferencing.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Mary Winston, TDLR. How's everyone today? I think all of us have had individual training or group training just internally, but I wanted to give a few pointers today before we start the meeting. The meeting is obviously being conducted by video conference. The public is watching via live stream, and persons who signed up to make public comment will have a chance to do so later in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. Here are some tips to make sure we have a successful meeting. Please keep your microphone muted until you'd like to speak. Please put all phones on silent and turn off any sources of noise in your workspace. Here's one thing that I have a problem with because I'm a hand talker and I start going, but that's fidgeting. So instead of someone listening to what I'm saying, they're like, why is this woman moving around on the camera? So as much as you can, try to not fidget quite as much as I might like to. Please state your name before you begin speaking. Raise your hand. This platform does have a raise hand feature, but because Mr. Epperson is running this meeting, because all of us are keeping our eyes on so many other things, to click over to that raise hand feature is another kind of thing to do, and we may miss something. So we're going to do it kindergarten style. We're going to raise our hand. We want to speak. So presiding officer can see us, call on us. We're going to say our names, and then we will be given an opportunity to speak. Also, something different here, we'll take roll call votes on any actions. So Anna will call the person's name, the board member's name, and you will unmute yourself and then give us an yay or nay, and then mute yourself again. That way we have it on the record and we have it on YouTube, and it's the simplest and most effective way that we've been able to do it. If you have any problems connecting during the meeting, try to let the presiding officer know. We have staff working in the office, me, Anna, Angelica, Delia. Mr. Fickle's around here somewhere. He runs this whole show, but we never see him. So we're practicing correct social distancing. We will, if you have those connectivity issues, let us know. We'll see what we can do, or Mr. Fickle will, to get you back on. Stay on camera during the meeting. Even if you aren't speaking, if you need a recess, let the presiding officer know and raise your hand visibly on the camera. This is no problem. We'll take 5, 10, whatever Mr. Epperson directs us to do. If you get inadvertently disconnected from the meeting, rejoin the meeting using the same link you used to join initially. We've now had several of these meetings. They've gone pretty successfully, and we keep trying to make them better. Using this medium, we know there may be a few awkward moments, a couple of hiccups. No worries. We'll deal with them in real time and take a small recess if we need to. This is anticipated and it's okay. We will adjust and we'll go through each agenda item and take care of everything we need to act on. I just want to thank everyone for being available today and looking forward to a fantastic meeting. It's good to see everybody. It's been a minute. Thank you.
Mr. Epperson, you're muted, sir.
Call on Mary Padell. She's going to bring the open meetings training for the members.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, my name is Molly Fudel. I'm an Assistant General Counsel here at TDLR. I'm going to be presenting the open government training today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a PowerPoint presentation for y'all. It'll be, since I'm going to have my screen sharing, it'll be tough for me to see your hands if you raise your hands. So I'll ask that you hold your questions until the end, and then there'll be time for that. Okay. All right, so bear with me for just a second. Okay, can everybody see this presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so today we're going to go over the Open Meetings Act, the Administrative Procedure Act, and the Public Information Act, and these are all designed to promote open government. So starting with the Open Meetings Act, the purpose is to ensure open and transparent government, and it requires meetings to be open to the public and to be preceded by public notice of what's going to be talked about at the meeting. The act's mandatory, and it's construed in favor of open government. So the first concept is a quorum. This is pretty easy to understand. It's just a majority of the members of the advisory committee. So for y'all, you have 9 members. So a quorum is 5. And so a quorum must meet in order to take official action. So for example, a vote. If we called a meeting and we didn't have a quorum, that's fine. You could still discuss whatever you wanted to. You just couldn't take any formal action, couldn't take a vote. Deliberation, it's a discussion over anything that is advisory committee business. So for example, the licensed breeder program. A meeting is anytime a quorum engages in a deliberation, so discusses advisory board business. And keep in mind, a meeting can take place anywhere. So usually it would take place for us over at North Campus in the meeting room. Today it's taking place over video conference. A meeting can take place over the phone. It could be over email. It could be on Facebook. It's all evolving with the new technology. So notice this is what we call the agenda. We have to post an agenda with the date, time, place, and subject of each meeting. And this is, we have to file it with the Secretary of State at least 7 days before the meeting. And this is to give the public notice of what we're going to talk about, so they have an informed opportunity to make a decision about whether or not they want to attend. And we have to stick with what's on the agenda. We can't engage in discussions that on subjects that aren't on the agenda. One question comes up is, what about social functions, conventions, and workshops? So can members ever meet in an informal setting without violating the Open Meetings Act? The answer is yes. You're free to engage in conversation that's incidental to that event, but any other conversation that is advisory committee business can't be discussed because it hasn't been provided on an agenda filed with the Secretary of State's office. So an example of this would be if you decided to have like a Christmas party and everybody got together, maybe not this year, maybe next year, and you could talk about life. How are you doing? How's your family and everything? But you just couldn't talk about things that were within the licensed breeder program business. So some key points to remember: always be aware of any situation outside of a meeting in which a quorum is present. So anytime you get close to that 5-member threshold, your antennas should kind of be raised. Don't engage in substantive conversations relating to the licensed breeder program when a quorum's involved and you're outside of that meeting, a public meeting. Beware the walking quorum, so we'll talk more about that. A walking quorum is just when some members engage in a discussion about official business and then communicate those discussions to other members, and then it totals a quorum. So it totals 5 people discussing that. So even though fewer than a quorum participate initially, then when it gets continued and continued and continued, like a game of telephone, eventually you reach that 5 members, and that's a meeting under the Act. So here's an example, a 5-member advisory board, 2 members exchange phone calls and emails about thoughts on an upcoming rule change, and they exchange research that they've done. And then one of the board members forwards that to another member. At that point, 3 have engaged in the discussion, so they've met that quorum threshold. And that is a meeting, and it should have been preceded by notice, so it's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So some things to keep in mind: walking quorums can occur during conference calls, video conferences, hallway discussions. That would obviously be more relevant when we're meeting in person. Emails and text messages, other new technologies. So, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever the kids are on these days. So best practices to avoid a walking quorum. Don't meet in small groups and discuss the licensed breeder program and then forward those discussions or communicate that to other members. Don't send emails or text messages to other members about the breeder program, even if you send those individually. And don't put posts on social media about it if it's likely that a quorum is going to see that post, because then that is a meeting technically under the Act. And don't ask your fellow members what they think about a particular issue. That's called polling, and it's essentially conducting an informal vote outside of a meeting. So some guidelines for open meetings. We can only discuss the items of the agenda during public comment. That's when members of the public are given an opportunity to speak. And you can give them reasonable limits on the amount of time, but we don't engage in back and forth discussion. Okay, let's see. So a member of the board you can raise a subject that's not on the agenda, but we can't discuss it. All we can do is propose to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. Some more best practices: limit your discussions to the agenda items. Avoid allowing those discussions to wander off, and we'll be listening and we'll be helping out with that. And don't respond during public comment to issues that aren't on the agenda. And before the meeting, what really helps is if you identify things that you want to talk about so that we can go ahead and put those on the agenda. So the Open Meetings Act wouldn't be much of a statute, much of a law, if it didn't have some consequences for violating it. So anybody can go to court and challenge an action that's taken in violation of the Open Meetings Act. There are criminal penalties for knowingly violating the Act. There's a monetary penalty of $100 to $500, or jail time, or both. More best practices: don't engage in the walking quorum. Talk about only what's on the agenda. And then we've got some resources for you here, some from the Attorney General. And at the very bottom, you'll see the phone number for the General Counsel's office. Feel free to call us at any time if you have any questions. And I believe these are provided to you as a separate handout, all these resources as well. So I'm going into the Administrative Procedure Act. So the purpose is to establish minimum standards for state agencies and provide the public an opportunity to participate in transparency during the rulemaking process. When we talk about a rule, we're talking about a statement of general applicability. So we're talking about something that applies to everybody, and it applies to the public. It doesn't talk about only the internal management of a state agency. And when we talk about a rule, we're also talking about amending rules or repealing rules that already exist. Some of the sources for rulemaking: of course, rulemaking ideas can come from anywhere. We've got legislative changes. We'll be talking about those later in the meeting. You guys, advisory boards, might have some ideas. Staff, we've got the 4-year rule review. I'll be talking about that also later in the meeting. And a rule petition. So a rule petition can come from essentially anybody in Texas. Could be a resident, a business, government, organization, anybody who's in Texas can send us an idea for a rule. So here I've got a flow chart of the rulemaking process here at TDLR. It's very long. I'll go through all the steps. Don't feel like you need to memorize all this. This is what staff is for. This is just to give you an overview. So once we get the idea for the rule and we do our internal review, we forward it to the governor's office and then bring it to you at your advisory board meeting. We will then publish the rules in the Texas Register, and the public will have an opportunity to comment in 30 days, 30-day public comment period. We'll look at those public comments and we'll bring them back to you as well as the rules. And you can make a recommendation to the commission to either adopt the rules as published or make changes. The commission will then consider that recommendation and the public comments and make their vote. If they vote to adopt those rules, the adoption notice is filed in the Texas Register, and the new rules will be effective at least 20 days after that. We've also got the 4-year rule review process. Again, don't feel like you need to memorize this. This is just an overview. But every 4 years, we review the rules. We file a notice of intent to review in the Texas Register, just like we do with the other rules, and we gather those public comments. Then we take them to the commission, and the commission determines whether the rules should be readopted. And any comments that we get during that process, we will bring those to you, and we will examine them to see if any changes need to be made in the future. More resources for you regarding rulemaking, and again, these should be provided to you in a handout. Public Information Act, also known as Open Records. So this is to allow access to the public information about their government and how their government's working for them. So the Act makes all documents, records, and other information relating to public business open to the public with some exceptions. It includes electronic communications, so emails, texts, etc., as long as it's about official business. And it's construed liberally in favor of granting requests for information. So if you receive a written request for records and you think it might be an open records request, please forward it to us as soon as you get it so we can get started on it. And if we ever contact you for information, please get back to us as soon as you can, because we work on a tight deadline in fulfilling these requests. So under the Act, we have to respond as soon as possible, but no later than 10 business days after we receive the request. And we can't ask somebody why they want the records. We can only ask for clarification to better understand what records they're asking for. So the general rule is everything is public, but certain information is accepted. So examples are date of birth, some email addresses, education documents, and then medical records, of course. And here are more resources. At the bottom, we've got the phone number again, and TDLR's Open Records email address. It's open.records@tdlr.texas.gov. So I am done with the presentation. I will stop sharing my screen. And I'm available for any questions that you might have.
It appears we have questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, next, we're going to I need a motion and a second for the approval of the minutes.
I put forth the motion.
Your second?
I'll second.
Okay, Anna, will you do a roll call vote for this?
Yes, sir. Babette Ellis, Joseph Levine,
Aye.
Cynthia Rothermel,
Aye.
Dr. Melanie Mercer,
Aye.
Andrea Gregg,
Here.
Kimberly Papke,
Aye.
and presiding officer Steve Epperson. The motion is passed, sir.
It's time now. We'd normally do public comments. It was my understanding that we received no emails for public comments. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Do you staff reports, and call on Tarsha Red for our statistics.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tarsha.
Morning.
Well, licensing has seen a slight increase in the number of breeders since our last fiscal year. We last fiscal year ending in August of 2020. For that year, we received 13 new breeder applications, and we have 5 cat breeders, which is an increase over what we've had since the program has been with TDLR. We have 157 dog breeders and a combination of 3 cat and dog breeders for a total population of 159. And it's kind of interesting to see that this program is starting to grow just a little bit. That is my report overall. We don't have any personnel updates. There have been no changes that affect the breeder program as far as personnel goes or projects. And of course, nobody's doing any real outreach right now, and licensing doesn't have anything scheduled at this time. Any questions?
Yes. How many breeders have dropped out of the program?
I don't have that data, but I can get it for you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Get a better understanding of how it's growing and how it's back and forth there. The number seems to be about what it's been. So, okay, well, I've lost everybody's picture here, but is any more questions for Tarsha? If not, I'm going to move on to the customer service division. We're going to call Juan Nguyen for personal updates and statistics.
Morning, advice board members. My name is Tuan Nguyen, and I'm one of the customer service managers for the licensed breeders program. So just going our data for contacts, we have had an average about, let's see here, 56 contacts per month, where a lot of our peak seasons are in January and September and July, as you have seen. Our general inquiries for licensed breeders is usually about their statuses for their renewals, how to issue a dupe, and some website navigation questions. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Do we have any questions? It appears not. Juan, appreciate that. We can move on to the enforcement division, and Aaron Heath will give us personal updates, statistics, and case highlights.
Hi, good morning. My name is Aaron Heath, and I'm a prosecutor in the enforcement division. First, we're going to start with some personnel updates. John Medlock was promoted to chief prosecutor. He's been here for 7 years and was previously a prosecutor and a senior prosecutor. Trevor Thielen was promoted to senior prosecutor. Trevor has been here for 9 years and was previously a prosecutor. Jackie Revilla was promoted to legal assistant supervisor. She has been with TDLR for 18 years and has previously served as a legal assistant and senior legal assistant. Debbie Hawkins was also promoted to legal assistant supervisor, and she's been with TDLR for 8 years as a legal assistant. And then we've had 3 retirements. Our investigations manager, Greg Dotson, who retired after 22 years here. Our prosecution legal assistant manager, Daryl Kuntz, who retired after 18 years with TDLR. And senior investigator, Esmer Argujo, retired after 21 years with TDLR. So congratulations to those 3. Now on to some of the statistics. For the breeder program, we had 54 cases opened in fiscal year 2020. and we've closed 58 cases, so we're making progress, closing more than get opened. The average time to close was 362 days, and the percentage of cases resolved in 6 months is 6.9%. These deviate from the TDLR average statistics that you see on the right. I think mostly due to the fact that the investigations take a while because of the travel that the investigators have to do to go to many of these facilities, and the fact that some of these individuals, especially for the consumer complaints for unlicensed activity, are hard to locate. And then we also, our main goal is compliance. And so we work with these individuals, and that means there's some back and forth. We get a complaint, we investigate it, case comes to me. I tell them this is what you have to correct to either lower the fine or to receive a warning. And there's a little bit of back and forth that takes some time to resolve the cases. 1.72% of the cases result in disciplinary action, and we currently have 46 cases pending for the program. And you can see the sources right here for the breeder program. 69% are the consumer complaint-based cases, and then 31% are departmental cases, which are usually inspections cases. If we could go down a little bit, thank you. So for our case outcomes, we've had, in this fiscal year, we haven't had any commission orders, which are orders that happen after we find a violation, they request a hearing, we go to a hearing, there's a PFD issued, and that PFD is considered by the commission, and the commission rules either there was a violation or there wasn't a violation. We hadn't had any of those in this fiscal year. We've had one default order, and that's where we issue the NOAV, the notice of alleged violation, saying that we believe there's a violation, and the respondent facility did not respond to us, so we defaulted them. And then there have been 0 agreed orders this fiscal year, which we issue that notice of alleged violation. They say, okay, yes, we agree to the violation. They settle the case with us. So far, there have been $11,000 in penalties assessed. We have not collected any money off of that, of those penalties. We have revoked 1 license for disciplinary measures. No licenses suspended, no licenses denied or revoked for criminal history. 0 cease and desist orders, and then 57 informally resolved cases. And kind of what I was talking about previously, those are either there's insufficient evidence, the violation doesn't merit a penalty or a sanction, so we issue a warning letter, or we've worked with the individuals to resolve the issue, such as people getting licensed or renewing expired licenses or getting the documentation that is needed. The next section are the alleged violations. These are the highest amounts of violations at opening of a case. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the violation was committed, but that's why the case was opened. And so the highest count we have is for unlicensed activity, the unlicensed breeder. And then if you see a few down at 7, we also have expired breeders, which is a subset of unlicensed activity. Then there's no routine or preventative health care, issues with the construction of primary enclosures, and then a few others that aren't as common. And then at the bottom, the violations that actually result in disciplinary action, we've had, although they're sectioned out here, there's actually 2 for no routine or preventative health care. There's 1 at the bottom and 1 at the top. And then there's a food or water receptacle violation, failed to provide basic grooming, failed to properly clean primary enclosures, and failure to collect or remove waste. Next, I'm going to get into the, we selected kind of 4 representative cases for you to consider. 2 of them because of, I suppose, how serious they were. First, we'll start with Yorkies and Poodles. So in that case, a default order was entered against Barbara Barrett, who's DBA Yorkies and Poodles, and an administrative penalty of $9,000 was assessed. And we also revoked the facility license. Yorkies and Poodles was cited for failing to assist a department investigator in performing an inspection, failing to remove excreta from primary enclosures daily and from under primary enclosures as often as necessary, for housing females in heat in the same primary enclosure with males for non-breeding purposes, for failing to develop, document, and follow an appropriate plan to provide dogs with the opportunity for daily exercise, failing to provide basic grooming to each animal to maintain health and cleanliness, and then failing to develop and maintain a written healthcare management protocol approved by a veterinarian that addresses routine and preventative care for each animal, and failing to provide appropriate care and treatment for any injury, disease, or illness that may affect an animal's health or well-being. Something that's not in the case highlight for this one, I believe it was around 100 animals that this breeder had, and they were seized by local authorities. The next case is CKS's Dachshunds, and I know it's misspelled on there, but that is the name of their license, so that's not us. So for that case, an agreed order was entered against Skylar D. Cummings, Carla L. Hendrickson, and Kelton L. Roberson, DBA CKS's Dachshunds, and an administrative penalty was assessed for $4,315. The violations found were acting as a breeder without a facility license, engaging in breeder activities with an expired facility license, and failing to have each animal used for breeding examined by a veterinarian at least once in every 12-month period. For the next case is DNS Puppies. An agreed order was entered against Deborah Jean Pence, DBA DNS Puppies, and assessed an administrative penalty of $750. The violation found was failing to remove excreta from primary enclosures daily. And then the last case we're highlighting for you is the Puppy Man. A default order was entered against Mitchell D. Gilbert, DBA the Puppy Man, and an administrative penalty of $11,000 was assessed, and the facility license was also revoked. The violations found for the Puppy Man were failing to keep food receptacles clean and sanitized, and failing to offer uncontaminated food to the animals, failing to keep water receptacles clean and sanitized, and failing to offer potable water to the animals, failing to remove excreta from primary enclosures daily and from under primary enclosures as often as necessary, failing to keep the facility clean and free of accumulations of trash, junk, waste products, and discarded matter, failing to establish and maintain an effective program for the control of pests, failing to provide basic grooming to each animal to maintain health and cleanliness, and failing to provide routine and preventative health care to each animal, and failing to provide appropriate care and treatment for any injury, disease, or illness that may affect an animal's health or well-being. In this case, also, I can't recall the exact number, but it was somewhere close to, I believe, 150 animals were seized from this facility, and that included more than just dogs and cats. There were some livestock involved in that case. Well, not on our end, but for seized from them. And so that is the end of the enforcement report. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes. Does this report, the statistics and highlights, go back to our last meeting, or is this just for the past year?
It's just fiscal year 2020. So not all the way back to the last meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Heath, Joseph Levine, good day.
Hi.
Will this report be available later online?
Yes, I believe it should have been made available to you already.
I'm sorry.
Is that right, Anna?
Yes, sir. It's available on our website for all the public to see. It's on the licensed breeders webpage, and it has also been sent with your board materials for you as well.
I apologize. I should have been better prepared. Thank you, Mr. Heath.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Any other questions? It appears not. We'll move on to the Regulatory Program Management Division and Mr. Russ Tolley.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes.
Great. Russell Tolley, RPM Division, and I'll be giving the staff report today. For the personnel updates, Latasha Poland and I are still the program specialists for the breeder program. There has been one change. Our immediate supervisor is now Stuart Stenard, who is taken over for Lee Parham, who's been elevated to a new position. As far as outreach, as far as outreach programs, the COVID-19 has pretty much brought all of our outreach efforts to a standstill. Latasha Poland and Charlotte Melder last attended the TACA, the Texas Animal Control Association annual training conference in November 2019, and that was the last outreach program by RPM staff. Conferences have been postponed, I assume, or canceled outright. The annual Texas Unites for Animals conference, normally held in April every year here in Austin, was canceled due to the health and safety concerns. In addition, I have not received any scheduling for the Professional Pet Breeders annual conference that normally takes place in Mount Pleasant, Texas. Mr. Epperson probably could speak to that. That concludes my report, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
It appears we have questions, and the Licensed Breeders Conference has been canceled for this year. And also, I'd like to congratulations to Lee on his promotion. So with that, we'll move on to the Field Inspection Division and Mr. Reeves with personal updates, statistics, and current projects.
Good morning, board members, chair, TDLR staff, and those people out there online. Just got a few personnel updates. Juan Munoz was promoted to manager in field inspections for our central region. Angela Sanders was promoted from field inspector to liaison. Those were effective in September 16th. We had a few promotions from our field staff. Heather Allen, Lance Caroland, Abraham Delgado, Michael Hanna, and George Vega were all promoted to Inspector 5 positions, and that was effective October of last year. James Turner was also promoted to liaison, and that's for the North region, and that was back in November. We want to say a big congratulations to Julianne Crocker. She was promoted to a management analyst with our Office of Innovation and Project Management. And we have welcome Colleen Cloudy as our new analyst in field inspections. We got some statistics for you guys. As of 2020, it was pretty slow going. If you look at the third quarters when we pulled the inspections back, and we started in March, April, and May, we're not recording any inspections from that point on. In June, we returned to inspections, but with a limited capacity. We did only pre-license inspections and have not moved forward into the periodic inspection cycle. We also have our top 10 violations. If you look at the violations, number one, dealing with housing facilities. These coincide with what Mr. Heath presented in enforcement, but pertaining only to inspections. So this is what we found during an inspection. Just wanted to make that clear. You'll look at most of these are records related, failing to have healthcare management, and posting. We had 9 was posting of your public license, your TDLR license, and then document your exercise protocol that rounds out number 10. Move on to current projects. So I spoke before we suspended all inspections as of March 17th in response to the COVID pandemic. We then got together, distributed some personal protective equipment, and we assumed inspections at the end of May on a limited basis, and those inspections only were for the pre-license inspections in the breeder program. We then assumed inspections full-time. Well, I can't say full-time, but on a limited basis back in June for some other programs, just with some stipulations. And we are currently in the process of looking at desk audits and reviewing the required documentations. And in some effect to that, we have virtual inspections where we are reviewing the process right now. It's in a very preliminary state right now. So we'll go ahead and see what that transpires after that. Do you have any questions?
It appears that we have none. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
And yours too. Now I'm going to call on Mary Winston from the office.
Good morning, everyone. Before I give the executive report, Mr. Epperson, you had a question for Tarsha Red in licensing, and she has that information for you. So I want to give her an opportunity to present it at this time.
Okay, good morning again, Tarsha Red. Mr. Epperson, there are a total of 119 breeders that are no longer a part of the program, and that's a combination of licenses that have been terminated, withdrawn, expired beyond renewal, out of business, which I would think that the ones expired beyond renewal were probably also out of business, 2 revoked, and then 5 suspended.
Thank you. That gives a better idea of what the program's doing as far as who's here and who's not.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Winston.
Well, before I begin again, Mr. Levine has a question. His hand is raised. Good job, Mr. Levine.
Thank you, Joseph Levine for Tarsha Red. Good morning.
Good morning.
The statistics that you've given us, thank you, by the way, for those. What is the time frame for that? Is that since the inception of the program or fiscal year 2020?
Since the inception of the program.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think I can begin my report now. And I want to remind all of the members that though we do want to remain muted, we do need to make sure that our cameras are on so we can see your faces. And I know with connectivity issues, things may bounce around, but I wanted to give that reminder. So beginning this report, we're going to 6A, the executive report, personnel updates. Since we've seen you all, we've had some changes in the executive office. Carla James, who was formerly with the agency as one of the deputy executive directors, she retired. So she left us, and she had such big shoes to fill that along with Mike Mendez, who was already a deputy executive director, we added 2 more, Christina Kaiser and David Gonzalez. Both Christina Kaiser and David Gonzalez are former directors of divisions and have been promoted to that new position. And Mike Mendez was super familiar with this agency because he formerly was chair of our commission. So great folks in those positions. And based on Christina Kaiser being promoted from Director of Enforcement, our new Director of Enforcement is Mr. Ron Foster. Based on Mr. Gonzalez's promotion to Deputy Executive Director, Ms. Charlotte Melder took over his position as Director of RPM. So a lot of movements. One thing I love about this agency is that that is truly allowed. And all of those folks had up 10 years and some over 20 years with the agency. So well deserved, and they know what they're doing. Next, I'll move on to updates from the 86th legislative session. Just wanted to hit on a few items of note. They don't affect your program, but they do affect TDLR as a whole. The required hours to obtain a cosmetology license were sent down from 1,500 hours and down to 1,000 hours. So this is going to cause a significant change that we've been working with since before it all actually happened on a possibility perspective basis, and it did. So our teams are working with this new change because that's a large licensee population. Senate Bill 2119 in the 86th legislative session transferred motor fuel quality and metering from the Department of Agriculture to TDLR. And so that is a new program that we are having and are onboarding, and we welcome them aboard. And that's a big change, but we're up to the challenge. Senate Bill 616 transferred the motorcycle and ATV operator safety program to us as well. So we got two new hitters, and we have some more advisory boards, and we've been working this whole time, so it's looking good for these new family members to TDLR. Also, this was a wonderful thing from that 86 legislative session. We were allocated monies to get a new licensing system. As most of you know, we operate currently under 9 systems. We have legacy systems, and we've had ones that TDLR had for a long time, and then we'll get another program that does not fit into that format, and then we'll take on that system. And so some of those licensing systems don't talk to each other, so that creates a great workload for our staff. We are working on getting this Texas licensing system up and running, and we were allocated the funds, so that's been wonderful. We also got allocated 9 FTEs to help with fighting the state for Texas for human trafficking. And that is a wonderful initiative. It's statewide. And we also are a part of TDLR. We're a part of the Human Trafficking Prevention Coordinating Council, which consists of several state agencies so that we can collectively fight trafficking. So those are some key updates from that session. And as you know, next year, a few months, calendar year, we'll be moving on to the 87th session. Now I want to talk about B, which is the COVID-19 response. Here I will be referring to TDLR's website page. It's entitled TDLR Takes Action in Response to COVID-19 Threat. Our response has been both internal and external. Externally, we've acted and continue to act as a conduit of sorts, relaying information as it becomes available from the Department of State Health Services, the CDC, and the Office of the Governor. On this page, you will find that we have links to all of the governor's executive orders. And for those of you who've signed up to receive emails from TDLR, you began receiving those emails related to your program of interest and COVID-19 requirements around May 1st. Internally, I always say that we work very hard to make this look easy, and we really do. Internally, TDLR staff has worked to make this as smooth as possible because this COVID-19 pandemic did bring about a change. In March, our IT staff, led by our executive team, moved with almost unimaginable speed to relocate as much in-office work staff to remote working status. We still have people who had to remain in the office, socially distanced, of course. We have mailroom personnel as well as finance personnel because certain things cannot be outsourced remotely. But we also maximized all of our existing remote platforms, and we learned and incorporated new remote platforms. Thank you to Michael Fickle for investigating those, setting those, and getting those up for us because they allow us to communicate within the agency and to conduct external meetings such as these. This has not been without internal and very personal disruption. We've seen staff members who have personally become ill or who've had family members become ill. We've temporarily closed our offices to have them deep cleaned. But we've truly shown a tremendous spirit within our staff to serve the public in spite of these setbacks. We've all really seen the core values of TDLR shine through. Next on the agenda, strategic planning. This can also be found on TDLR's website. We provided this required plan to the governor's office on June 1st of this year. Entitled Leading Texas to a Brighter, Stronger Future, this planning document is a roadmap that provides direction for our staff and the public on who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Of note, the plan introduces our new anti-trafficking unit, discusses the Sunset Commission process, and also includes information and planning on how TDLR deals with disaster preparedness. The plan incorporates input from commission members, advisory board members, staff, and the public. This is typically the time of year that actually we would have been done. It's normally done around March and April, the time that we weren't able to get out there. You'd see us going around the state. You'd see on social media and on our website that TDLR is coming to a town near you. And we would ask the questions, what do we do well? What would we do better? What can we do better? And if you were king or queen for a day, what is the one law, rule, or policy of TDLR that you would change? We couldn't do that this year. So we pivoted. We crafted questionnaires, we conducted surveys, and we held virtual strategy plan meetings to gather public input. We really put a lot of work into this. It's not just a once a year thing for us, or we kind of work on this always. We always let you know if it's something we can't do. This possibly could go into the strategic plan. And this is something we can bring forth. And this is something we would like to do for our agency and for the citizens of Texas. For your viewing pleasure, this is located on our website. If you've not already had a chance to, please take a moment to review it. Now I want to talk about the Sunset Commission report. The Sunset staff began their review of the agency on last year. Led by project manager Emily Johnson, the Sunset staff took a deep dive into all of TDLR and its processes. The Sunset process is not designed to be complimentary. It's designed to critically assess the functionality of the agency, to take note of what's good and not so good, and to give us recommendations on what they think we can do better. And the staff offers recommendations, actually. The Sunset staff worked extensively on their report, observed the agency over several months, interviewed staff, commission members, advisory board members, members of the public, took public statements, and they also will continue to take your public statements or your on their website. So it's still up there and it's still open for comment. TDLR will become a better agency because of this. So we did not look at it negatively. We were very open about it, and we appreciate everything that they have recommended. And we know these are the first steps. There is good news. TDLR has been recommended to be continued for another 12 years. But I want to tell you again, this is just first steps. Within their report, it's about a 100-page report, I think. They came up with 7 issues/recommendations. I want you to be aware of, because this affects your program, that issue 2 recommended 15 license types across 8 agencies that are not necessary to protect the public. This is a staff recommendation. Within that recommendation, licensed breeders was one of those license types in one of those programs. If you wish to make public comment toward Sunset, please do. It is still available there for you. And if you'd like to read this report, it is available on their website as well as our website. But if you go to the Sunset Commission website and go to those that are being reviewed, the agencies, you'll find TDLR has a whole page. They have their report, they have places where you can comment. It's very interactive. Whereas we aren't the purveyors of this information, they are. We were just the folks being interviewed and assessed. So if you have input, please feel free to give it as a member of the public. Thank you. So I want to let you know that next steps are hearing for this. This hearing has not been scheduled. There is a sunset hearing going on this morning. Not sure if it's over yet. I was looking earlier, but Our agency was not a part or one of those agencies who was a part of that hearing. They're moving step by step, and we will notify you and keep you posted when TDLR is asked to come and provide testimony, or even when our agency is up for hearing. Lastly, communication outreach statistics. This is a snapshot of online activity for the tow trucks, the operators, and vehicle storage facilities website over the last 6 months. We average about 99 views a day. 27% of those are from the desktop computer, and 71% are from a smartphone, with 2% from a tablet. So I want to let you know, I gave this report yesterday, and it was almost completely switched as far as desktop and smartphone. You guys are onto that smartphone. Tow truck drivers, they are on the desktop. It's just interesting, but it lets us know as we move forward with what kind of technology we need to work on developing, what best would reach our target audience. The top reasons for visiting the site: how to apply for a cat or dog breeder license, the law and rules, pre-license inspection information, frequently asked questions, and responsibilities of licensed breeders. This is my report. If you have any questions, please feel free.
Yes, ma'am. Steve Epperson on the Sunset Commission. Who will do the final say on that? Does that go through the committee and then back to the commission? Are they the ones, or will it have to go back through the Congress?
It goes through the legislature. So we have the staff report, and lovely people. And they really took us through the ringer, not in a bad way, but they were always there. They were like, you know, they were just there, you know. So, and they were just critiquing, asking questions. So that's the staff recommendation. Next step, there's a hearing. And then the actual Sunset Commission will make a recommendation. And then the legislature will decide on whether or not they will follow through with those recommendations. So it is still timely if you want to make a public comment to go to their website and do so.
Thank you. Is there any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Mary. It was very concise.
Thank you.
That appears to be all the questions. We'll move on to H. And we're going to discuss possible recommendations on the proposed amendments to the existing rules.
I think that's my topic.
Molly, that you?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
All right. Good morning, Molly Fudel, Assistant General Counsel with TDLR. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and share the proposed rules that I'll be presenting today. Okay. So these proposed rules are designed to implement some legislation from the last session. SB 1531 made some changes to the licensed breeder statute as it pertains to criminal history. So denying or revoking a license due to animal cruelty or neglect in the past 5 years before the application. Specifically, the bill added a no contest plea to the reasons why a license would have to be revoked or denied. And it also updated the procedure for doing that. So that is already effective. That was effective September 1st of last year. And these rules, these proposed amendments, just bring the rules in line with that statute. But those changes are already effective. So I'll go through here and go through the specific changes. You'll see right here in Rule 91.25, we're adding this NOLO plea. That's the no contest plea to list of reasons why we would need to deny or refuse to renew a license. You'll see this language in B has a strike through. That's actually being moved to this next section in 91.92B. This language is already here, And so what we're doing is we're essentially removing a duplicate and moving the denial part to 91.92. So we think it's a way to better organize the rules. And then you'll see here in 91.92 in the title, we're adding the license denial, and then we're also putting that language here in B. And that is part of that, moving the language and making it a little bit more concise. And then you'll see in subsection A, we've got this new language. It simplifies the language a bit, and it simply refers to the statutes that relate to this program and the criminal history portions of those statutes. So we've got chapters 51, that's the TDLR enabling statute, 53, that pertains to criminal history, and 802, the licensed breeder statute. So here we're saying that the department shall deny, refuse to renew, suspend, or revoke a license in accordance with those statutes. And so the reason why we're doing that is because those statutes outline that updated process. And so rather than putting all that in the rules, we are just simply referring to the statutes. Then down in B, in B1, right here, we're just correcting an error that was in the rules. You'll see the strike through language says this chapter and the rules adopted under this chapter, but these are the rules. So really what that should say is chapter 802 and this chapter, meaning the rules. So that's not a substantive change, it's just a little bit of cleanup. That's it for the proposed rules. Staff recommendation is to publish these in the Texas Register and give the public a 30-day comment period. I'm available for any questions you might have, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen.
Anyone have questions for Molly? Do we have any discussion on the topic here? It appears that we don't, so I'm going to call for a motion and second to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And can I just step in? It wouldn't actually be to approve the minutes. The motion would be to recommend publication in the Texas Register.
Okay, it was written different here.
I apologize.
Okay, do I have a motion for that?
So
Motion
moved.
made. Cindy Rothermel.
And a second?
Joe Levine, second.
Anna, would you do a roll call vote? You're muted, Anna.
Babette Ellis, Joseph Levine,
Aye.
Cynthia Rothermel,
Aye.
Dr. Melanie Mercer,
Aye.
Andrea Gregg,
Aye.
Kimberly Papke,
Aye.
and presiding officer Steve Epperson.
Aye.
The motion passes, sir.
Okay, we're gonna call on Molly again for an upcoming four-year review, rule review process. I'll get to that in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Molly Feudel again. So we are coming up on the 4-year rule review for the licensed breeder program. I touched on this a little bit during the training, but every 4 years we review the rules for each one of our programs to make sure that the reasons for those rules still exist, and to seek public comment on whether any changes should be made to those rules. So what we do is we publish a notification in the Texas Register, very similar to how we would do for those proposed rules you just voted on, and seek public comment. We then forward those comments to the commission, and the commission reviews the comments and considers whether to readopt the rules. Assuming that they do readopt the rules, then that adoption notice is published in the Texas Register. And then those comments that we receive are forwarded to you. They're also evaluated by staff. And we look at whether changes should be made. So what we're going to do this time around, since it is close to these other rules being published, is we're going to publish those proposed rules first, those rule changes I just went over, and there'll be a 30-day period for that. Once that closes, there'll be the 30-day public comment period for the rule review. And that rule review covers all the rules, not just the ones that, like, in the proposed rules, that would only cover those 2 rules. The rule review covers all the rules. So there are 2 opportunities for the public to get their comments in. I realize that's kind of a convoluted, long-winded process, so please let me know if you have any questions.
It appears there are no questions, Molly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to move on to the agenda items for the next meeting. Any board members have any recommendations? It appears everyone is happy with what we have.
Mr. Levine does have a recommendation.
I'm sorry I could not see him.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson. Even though we all assume that we'll be brought up to speed on the status of the sunset report at our next meeting, I would recommend, for the record, that we be brought up to speed on the status of where the Sunset Commission's report pertaining to the licensed breeder program is at that time.
I think we've already got a report on where it is right now, so I'm assuming Mary will assure us that we get that.
We will. Thank you. Mary Winston here. And yes, we are awaiting next steps and we will provide an update because for those programs of specific interest, we want to make sure we get that information to you and definitely to this body as well. Thank you, Mr. Levine. We'll get it on there.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Winston.
Okay, that pretty well concludes everything. We need a discussion for the date, time, location for the next meeting. And I'm assuming, I really don't know where we'll be a year from now with the COVID. So I guess we need to keep that in mind for this. But we can go ahead and set a date for sure. Any recommendations?
Molly, would you have a recommendation on when we should meet back after the public comment period is over?
Yes, so late November, probably right after Thanksgiving or early December. That would give us an opportunity to get all of our public comments in on those proposed rule changes.
Okay, it looks like Thanksgiving is on the 26th. That's the last week of November. So we're looking at the first week of of December. We're totally open for that week if any of those days specifically work for our committee members.
I'm not looking at the calendar. I guess we can, that week there, you can do like you did with this one here, put out different dates and we can respond with email.
Of course, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
I recommend we meet in Cabo.
I like that recommendation. We can't do it, but I really like it.
I'm in.
And Mary Winston here, that looks like that's November, 30th through the 4th. So keep that in mind, and Anna will be reaching out to see availability, and we will likely be meeting with the same medium.
Okay, the last thing that I would like to bring out is the sadness we all felt with the passing of Dr. Cordis. He's going to be sorely missed. And has there been any movement on that replacement?
Mr. Epperson, we have not yet replaced Dr. Cordis, and he was such a wonderful person and part of this community. But we will also, that of course is the commission's replacement, but we'll make sure we keep you posted on that as well.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay, it is, look like 11:10. Gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
You did the same.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.